Welcome to the Phil and H Travel Podcast. Is it worth it?
Yeah, glad to be here for this one.
So today we are doing a deep dive into what we're going to call the ultimate untouched paradise fantasy,
Oh,
right?
absolutely, the fantasy we all have.
Right. Have you ever had that vision of being the one to discover a truly untouched tropical island? You know, the one where you get there way before the travel bloggers ruin it, before the mega resorts, like pave over the whole coastline with concrete.
Way before the rest of the world even knows it's on a map.
Exactly.
Yeah.
It's like getting an invite to this ultra-exclusive secret beach club. You get the coordinates, you show up feeling like a total VIP, but then the reality sets in.
Yeah, it sets in hard.
Yeah. You realize there are no lounge chairs, there's
Mhm.
no bartender, and if you want a fire pit as the sun goes down, you're basically going to have to dig it yourself in the sand with your bare hands.
Assuming you actually remembered to pack your own matches.
Right. So that is our mission for this deep dive today. We are looking at Comoros.
Which is such a fascinating case study.
It really is. And for anyone who hasn't spent, hours scouring satellite maps of the Indian Ocean, Comoros is this tiny island nation sitting right between Mozambique and Madagascar.
Just kind of floating out there in the channel.
Yeah. And our goal today, the whole point of this deep dive, is to answer one very specific question. Is the immense friction of traveling to Comoros actually worth the reward?
Because there is a lot of friction.
So much. We are stripping away all those highly edited, saturated photos you stumble across on social media. We're getting into the hard logistics, the real US dollar costs, and the absolute raw reality of traveling to one of the least visited nations on Earth.
Which honestly is the ultimate paradox of modern travel.
How so?
Well, you get the absolute bragging rights, right? You're standing on a beach where almost no one else has stood. But you immediately lose the entire safety net that modern infrastructure provides.
Right, you lose the safety net.
Exactly. I mean, we are so used to the aesthetic of isolation, but we demand the logistics of a major city. We want the empty beach, but we want the high-speed Wi-Fi and the flat white coffee right behind us.
Oh, totally. We want the untouched vibe, but with Apple Pay.
Yes. And the underlying economics of a place like Comoros are fascinating because the reality there fundamentally contradicts our standard assumptions about travel.
Okay, break that down for me.
You have a location with unparalleled natural assets, but the economic reality for a visitor is shockingly disconnected from the local standard of living. It is a crazy puzzle of geography, economics, and timing.
Let's actually pull apart that geography first, because I think a lot of people don't even know what Comoros looks like on a map.
It's not just one island, right?
No, it isn't a single landmass at all. It's an archipelago made up of three main independent islands. You've got Grande Comore, Mohili, and Anjouan.
And then there's Mayotte.
Right, Mayotte is geographically part of the chain, but it actually remains a disputed French department. So for someone navigating the independent nation of Comoros, those first three islands are your entire focus.
And to really understand what you're walking into, you have to look at the history, because it dictates everything.
They were colonized by France, right?
Yeah, colonized by France, but they gained independence pretty recently, in 1975. And the total population is tiny. We are talking under 1 million people across the entire archipelago.
That's incredible, under 1 million.
Yeah, and that population density, or really the lack of it, combined with its geographic position, has created this remarkably unique cultural synthesis.
Because of where it sits in the Mozambique Channel.
Exactly. It was a massive historical crossroads. So you have these deep Swahili roots from the East African coast.
Yeah.
Then you have centuries of Arab maritime trade influence, which is what brought Islam to the islands. And then you have the lingering administrative and architectural influence of the French.
That's this huge melting pot.
It really is. You see this synthesis everywhere. I mean, it's in the crumbling colonial architecture in the capital city. It's in the blend of Arabic and Bantu linguistics, and it heavily dictates the social etiquette, which we'll get into later.
And it also dictates the sensory experience, which I found amazing. The nickname for Comoros is literally the Perfume Islands.
The Perfume Islands, yeah.
Like, the air there is actually heavy with a scent of ylang-ylang, vanilla, and cloves.
I love that detail.
Right, and ylang-ylang is actually one of their major exports. It's the foundational scent for perfumes like Chanel No. 5.
Oh, wow. I didn't realize it was Chanel No. 5.
Yeah, so you step off the plane into this intoxicating agricultural environment, and you're surrounded by white sand beaches, these limpid turquoise seas, completely intact coral reefs.
It sounds perfect.
It does. And if you go over to the island of Mohili, You've got nesting sea turtles, you've got wild lemurs up in the canopy, and these massive Livingstone's fruit bats.
Wait, how massive are we talking?
Like wingspans that look like something out of a prehistoric documentary. It's wild.
That is insane.
And then back on the main island, Grande Comore, you have Mount Carthala, which isn't just some scenic peak. It's an active volcano with dramatic black lava flows that spill straight into the ocean.
So you have black lava rock against turquoise water.
Exactly. Creates this stark, jagged black coastline. It's stunning.
So, I mean, if you were to feed all of those raw assets into some algorithm designed to output the perfect ecotourism destination, Comoros would score perfectly.
100%.
It possesses basically every single geographic and biological advantage a tropical destination could ever ask for.
Which brings me to the glaring paradox of this entire deep dive. If this place possesses literally everything a traveler wants, the beaches, the wildlife, the volcano, the deep culture, why are the arrival numbers practically non-existent?
It's a great question.
We are talking about tourist arrivals in the low thousands annually. Thousands! Look at nearby island nations. Mauritius pulls in over 1 million tourists a year.
The Seychelles pulls in hundreds of thousands.
Right, and Comoros gets a few thousand people. Why is there such a massive structural wall keeping people out? Is it just terrible marketing?
No, it's not marketing. It comes down to a fundamental misunderstanding of what tourism actually is.
Okay, what do you mean?
Having the geographic ingredients for tourism is not the same thing as having a tourism industry.
Ah, ingredients versus industry.
Exactly. An industry is a highly complex machine. It requires supply chains that can deliver imported goods reliably. It requires a stable power grid that can actually handle the massive energy load of commercial air conditioning.
Which takes a lot of juice.
So much juice. It requires paved roads, consistent air traffic control, and a dedicated pipeline for hospitality training. And the reality is, Comoros possesses almost zero formal tourism infrastructure.
Right, you don't just naturally grow a 5-star resort out of the volcanic soil. You have to build it, and more importantly, you have to maintain it.
Precisely. And that lack of a formalized machine is the true double-edged sword for a visitor.
Because it's what keeps it authentic.
Yeah, on one hand, you get to experience a society that is not performing for you. The welcoming nature of the Comorian people is entirely genuine because they are not suffering from the severe tourist fatigue that you see in places like Venice or even parts of Bali, right?
Yeah, they're sick if you get.
Exactly. You are treated as a guest rather than just a walking wallet. But the immediate flip side is that when the logistics break down, and trust me, they will break down, there is no safety net.
There is no customer service desk you can retreat to and complain to.
None.
Being off the beaten track sounds incredibly romantic until you realize you are truly off the track and literally no one is coming to tow your rental vehicle out of the mud.
You are stepping into an unpolished beta version of a travel destination.
A beta version. That's the perfect way to put it. And if you are the kind of traveler who actually wants to experience that raw authenticity, you have a massive looming deadline to consider.
A ticking clock.
Yes, the math on whether you should go now or wait a few years is about to completely change.
This is perhaps the most urgent variable for anyone considering the trip right now. Comoros has been awarded the rights to host the 12th Indian Ocean Island Games in 2027.
Which is huge. I mean, for a nation of under 1 million people, this is a monumental macroeconomic shock.
Oh, it's massive.
The Indian Ocean Island Games is a major multi-sport event. Suddenly, this country that barely sees 3,000 tourists a year is legally obligated to host thousands of regional sports delegations, international media, and spectators all at exactly the same time.
They have to essentially build a functional tourism and hospitality industry overnight.
Right. They need massive new athletic facilities, and they need hundreds, if not thousands, of new hotel beds centralized in the capital, Moroni.
And that influx of capital and construction will permanently alter the landscape.
It's an impending wave of hyperdevelopment.
Yeah, it's like a gentrification wave hitting an entire country. If a traveler wants the authentic, slightly rough around the edges, current version of Comoros, the window is closing rapidly.
He has to get in there before the bulldozers arrive.
You really need to arrive before the heavy machinery reshapes the coastline and the international delegations show up.
But it's not just the physical landscape that's going to change, right? It's the baseline economics. When an event of this magnitude hits a microeconomy, the pricing structure gets entirely rewritten.
Oh, completely. This is a classic case of event-driven economic restructuring.
Explain how that works for the hotels.
So the 2027 games provide an immense incentive for local property owners to renovate and expand. But crucially, they will price these new accommodations to capture that influx of international government and sports money.
They know the delegations have deep pockets.
Exactly. And once that new high water mark for room rates is established and the local operators realize they can command those prices, the rates very rarely return to their pre-event levels.
The floor gets permanently raised.
The floor goes up and it stays up.
So if you wait until 2028, you're going to be paying the post-games premium, likely without receiving a massive upgrade in actual service.
Right, because the hospitality training won't have caught up to the physical concrete infrastructure.
That makes total sense. But let's say you decide, okay, I'm going to go this year to beat the rush. Navigating the timing is an incredibly intricate puzzle. You cannot just pick a week in your Google Calendar and book a ticket.
No, do not do.
You have to thread the needle between two massive constraints: the weather windows and the cultural calendar.
And the meteorological reality of the Indian Ocean dictates everything. You are basically looking at two highly distinct seasons.
Break those down for me.
Okay, from June to October, you have the dry season, the humidity drops, the rainfall is minimal, and the temperatures are far more manageable for actual physical exertion.
Which is important if you want to hike.
Right. If you are planning to trek up the black lava flows of Mount Carthala, this is objectively the only sensible time to do it.
Because the alternative is the December to April window.
Oh, yeah.
And that is the hot, sticky, wet season. And it's not just a little uncomfortable. You are sitting directly in the path of potential Indian Ocean cyclones.
Cyclones are no joke.
No. And when you combine torrential rain and high heat with the infrastructure issues we're going to discuss later, specifically the failing power grid that season quickly transitions from uncomfortable to physically exhausting.
Because you can't escape it.
Exactly. You cannot retreat to a nice air-conditioned room if the entire island has no power.
Right. So logic suggests you simply book your trip during the dry season, ideally in August when the weather is at its absolute peak.
Right. August sounds perfect.
But this is where the cultural calendar sets a massive trap for the uninformed traveler.
This might be one of the most fascinating economic quirks of the islands that we found in the sources. August in Comoros is widely known as the big weddings season.
The big weddings.
And these are not just, a quick afternoon ceremony and a catered reception dinner. In Comorian culture, particularly the grand marriage tradition, these are massive, multi-day, community-wide celebrations.
They are huge events.
They involve elaborate feasts, exchanges of immense wealth, and crucial social posturing. And to facilitate this, the entire Comorian diaspora people living in France, in mainland Africa, across the globe, they all return to the islands simultaneously.
Which introduces absolute extreme scarcity into an already microscopic accommodation market.
I book up everything.
Everything. When the diaspora returns, they buy out the local hotels, the guest houses, the rental vehicles. The available bed count for an independent tourist drops to near zero.
And the prices for whatever inventory is actually left absolutely skyrocketing. We looked at the raw data from Kayak and other sources on accommodation pricing across the year, and the swings are staggering.
What did the numbers look like?
Okay, so in November, which sits nicely in the shoulder season, average nightly rates for accommodations drop into the low double digits in US dollars. It's roughly the equivalent of 28 British pounds.
Wow, that's incredibly affordable.
Super affordable. But if you shift your search to February, or those peak wedding weeks in August, that average jumps to nearly 100 pounds a night.
For the exact same room.
For the exact same room. And even the day of the week fluctuates wildly. Because the market is so tiny, an NGO flying in a team of 5 people on a Tuesday can literally buy out the only decent hotel in town, causing weekday prices to eclipse weekend prices.
The algorithm is just hypersensitive to even the slightest shift in demand.
Completely. We also looked at pricing data tracked in South African Rand, and it pinpointed May as the absolute cheapest month to secure a bed, sitting around 847 Rand per night.
Okay, so May is the cheapest.
Yeah, but securing a cheap bed in May doesn't mean anything if you can't actually afford to get to the bed in the first place. The flight logistics are where the true financial barrier to entry becomes so obvious.
Oh, the flights. The isolation of the archipelago creates a severe bottleneck. The aviation market there is practically a monopoly for just a few regional carriers.
Let's talk numbers. If you are flying round trip from the UK, the data shows September is globally the cheapest time to fly.
Okay.
But you are still looking at an absolute minimum of $1,100 in the shoulder season. And that climbs to $1,400 or $1,500 during the high season.
From the UK. What about from the US?
If you are trying to reach Comoros from the United States, you are locked into a massive financial and temporal commitment. Flights sit tightly between $1,300 and $1,500 on average. But the real kicker is the transit time.
It takes forever, doesn't it?
You are staring down 25 to 30 hours of travel.
30 hours.
Yeah. You have to cross the Atlantic, likely transit through somewhere in Europe or the Middle East, fly down to East Africa, and then catch a regional hopper over the ocean.
And if you attempt to book this last minute, because maybe you're a spontaneous traveler,
Well, don't do that.
the airlines know you have literally no alternative. Those last-minute long-haul flights easily cross the $2,600 threshold.
$2,600 just for the flight.
You are committing thousands of dollars and an entire day of your life simply to reach the starting line of the expedition.
It is an incredible filter. It weeds out anyone who isn't deeply, obsessively committed to getting there.
It really does.
So if you synthesize all this timing data we pulled from the sources, the blueprint is pretty clear.
What's the verdict on timing?
You must target the June to October dry season so you don't melt in the humidity. You absolutely must avoid the August wedding spike so you don't go bankrupt. Or you take a calculated risk on those November shoulder season deals and just pray that the cyclone season starts late.
Which is a gamble.
A huge gamble.
But the true test actually begins the moment those airplane wheels touch down, because the arrival experience shatters every preconceived notion a traveler has about an island vacation.
Right. Let's walk through that arrival because the picture that sources paint is stark.
Paint it for me.
So, you land in Moroni, which is the capital city on Grande Comore. It's a low-rise, slightly crumbling port city. It does not look like Honolulu or even Port Louis in Mauritius.
It's not a polished resort town.
Not at all. The international airport, Prince Said Ibrahim Airport Code, HAH, is tiny. You step off the plane after 30 hours in transit, your body's completely exhausted, and you just want a coffee and a taxi, right?
That's all you want?
But there is no Starbucks, there are no global brands anywhere, there isn't some sleek arrivals lounge.
And more importantly, there is a fundamental absence of financial infrastructure right at the point of entry.
This blew my mind.
Yeah, travelers report that there are literally no ATMs at the international airport. Zero.
None.
You land in a foreign country, and the very first thing you rely on, withdrawing local currency so you can pay a cab driver, is impossible. The financial safety net is immediately cut the second you land.
It forces an immediate psychological adjustment. You cannot rely on the automated systems that basically govern travel in the developed world.
So, assuming you've prearranged a transfer and you actually make it into the city, you have to face the accommodation landscape. And scarce doesn't even begin to cover it.
It's incredibly limited.
If you pull up the major global booking platforms, you will find roughly 5 properties listed for the entire main island.
5 properties.
5. That extreme lack of inventory dictates the entire pricing structure of the country. It creates these distinct and honestly somewhat frustrating tiers of travel.
Break down the tiers. What are we looking at? Okay, at the absolute budget end, you can find a room for $25 to $50 a night.
That sounds reasonable.
It does, but we need to define what that actually buys you. You are getting a bed and a fan. You are dealing with highly intermittent power, meaning that fan will likely shut off at 2 ICM when you're sweating.
Oh, man.
And you generally cannot secure these budget rooms on the internet in advance. You have to physically show up, knock on a door, and negotiate the price in a mix of French and local dialect.
Which, is an acceptable, even thrilling prospect if you're a 22-year-old backpacker on a gap year.
Right. It's an adventure.
But if you were a professional who just burned 2 days of PTO to fly across the world, navigating a cash negotiation in the dark is highly stressful.
Yeah, nobody wants to do that.
Yeah.
So most people try to step up to the mid-range tier. This is where you pay $70 to $140 a night.
Okay, so decent jump in price. What do you get for $140?
At this price point, you finally get cleanliness, you get air conditioning, and you get basic security. But think about that price for a second. In parts of Southeast Asia, or even mainland East Africa, $140 a night buys you incredible luxury.
Oh, yeah. It buys you a villa with a private pool in Bali.
Exactly. In Comoros, $140 simply buys you clean and air-conditioned.
And if you want actual luxury,
The ceiling is quite low, but the price is high. If you book the Alexandra Beach Hotel and Resort, or the Golden Tulip, which are essentially the absolute pinnacle of accommodation on the island, you are paying $130 to $170, or significantly more depending on the season.
and what if you're bringing the family?
Oh, if you are foolish enough to attempt this trip with a family, requiring space, multiple beds, and reliable Wi-Fi, you are easily looking at well over $200 a night, purely because rooms large enough to hold a family are functionally non-existent.
The inventory just isn't there.
It's not there. And securing the room is only half the daily expense. The mechanics of the food supply chain add another massive layer of cost that you have to budget for.
What's the food situation like?
Well, the local food scene is deeply rooted in what the island actually produces. You are eating a lot of rice, incredible fresh pelagic fish, coconut, cassava, and bananas.
Which sounds delicious, honestly.
It's hearty and it's very local. But if you want a polished cafe culture, forget it. Getting a properly extracted barista-style espresso is essentially impossible.
So don't go looking for your morning latte.
No.
Mhm.
But if you want to eat in a restaurant that caters to foreigners, you are paying European prices. We got this from the Taste to Travel data.
Right.
A mid-range restaurant meal runs about €10. A meal at your hotel will cost you €15. If you want an imported beer, you are handing over £7.50.
Wow.
Even a basic soft drink is £1.50. We also looked at the Expatistan local cost of living data, and a basic lunch in Moroni is priced around 4,750 Comorian francs. A dozen eggs is over 1,400 francs. A 2-liter of cola is over 1,100 francs.
To contextualize those numbers for you, 4,750 Comorian francs is roughly $10.
For a standard, unremarkable lunch.
Yeah.
This is where the math completely breaks my brain, and I really want you to dig deep into the economics of this.
Let's do it.
The living cost data shows that the average post-tax salary for a local citizen in Comoros is roughly $183 a month.
A month?
Yes, $183 a month. Yet the estimated cost of living to maintain a Western standard is cited at over $1,200 a month. Tourists are dropping $10 on a lunch and $8 on a beer in a country where the average worker makes under $200 a month.
It's a massive discrepancy.
It's insane. How is this mathematically possible? Where is this massive premium actually going?
You are observing the brutal macroeconomics of isolation. This is what we call the macro budget paradox.
Okay, break that down.
When a traveler looks at the high prices in Comoros, they often assume it's simple price gouging. They think the locals are just ripping them off.
Right, the tourist tax.
Exactly. But the reality is much more systemic. It comes down to two factors: a captive audience and an incredibly hostile supply chain.
Explain the captive audience part first.
Well, because there are only a handful of hotels that meet international standards, like those 5 properties you mentioned, there is absolutely zero competitive pressure to lower prices. If a mid-range hotel knows you have literally nowhere else to sleep that offers air conditioning and a locked door, they can charge a luxury premium for a profoundly average room. You are paying a monopoly tax on comfort.
That makes sense. And the supply chain. Why on earth is an imported beer $7.50?
Think about the physical journey of that single bottle of beer.
Okay.
Comoros is a volcanic archipelago with minimal industrial manufacturing. Almost every manufactured good, every processed food item, and every single luxury amenity a Western tourist expects must be imported over the ocean.
Right.
That bottle of beer was manufactured on a different continent. It was loaded onto a cargo ship. It traversed the entire Indian Ocean. It was unloaded at a heavily underdeveloped port in Moroni, which lacks massive, efficient container handling infrastructure.
So it takes longer and costs more to unload.
Yes, and then it was transported over decaying roads to the hotel.
That definitely explains the freight cost, but, I mean, it still doesn't fully explain an $8 price tag for one beer.
The real cost is refrigeration.
Refrigeration.
Yes. The municipal power grid in Comoros is notoriously fragile. It suffers from daily, widespread blackouts. A hotel cannot serve warm beer to a tourist paying $150 a night, right?
Obviously not. The tourists would riot.
Therefore, the hotel must operate entirely off the grid. They have to purchase massive industrial diesel generators. They have to import the diesel fuel to run those generators, which is incredibly expensive. And they have to maintain the generators.
Oh, wow.
So when you pay $7.50 for a beer, you are not actually paying for the liquid in the bottle. You are paying for the diesel fuel that powered the generator that kept the fridge cold during a rolling blackout.
That is a brilliant way to frame it. The tourist is absorbing the immense, invisible overhead of operating a business in an environment that provides zero municipal support.
Exactly. The local population isn't paying $10 for lunch because they aren't eating imported food kept cold by a diesel generator. They are eating local cassava and fresh catch from the market.
So the Western tourist standard of living is mathematically disconnected from the local economy because it is an artificial imported bubble,
You nailed it. You are paying a massive premium to forcibly maintain a developed world bubble inside a developing world infrastructure.
which completely dictates your daily budget as a traveler.
He really
If
does.
you strip out the cost of those massive flights we talked about, a bare-bones backpacker still needs to budget $60, $90 a day just to survive the friction. A mid-range traveler who wants that air conditioning and safe transport needs $140 to $220 a day.
And luxury.
A luxury traveler is easily bleeding $250 to $350 a day or more for an experience that honestly wouldn't crack 3 stars in Dubai.
And what about the digital nomads?
Oh, for the digital nomad thinking of posting up for a month, you need $2,500 to $3,500 a month to survive there.
Though, as we will see, having the budget as a digital nomad does not mean you will actually be able to work.
No, it absolutely does not, which transitions us perfectly into the reality of moving around the islands, because the high costs are really just the entry fee.
Right, getting there is just step one.
To actually navigate Comoros, you have to survive a gauntlet of specific logistical landmines that completely upend how modern travelers operate.
These are the structural traps that consistently catch highly experienced, well-traveled individuals totally off guard.
Let's go through them. We've got 3 main traps.
Let's do it. We have become deeply conditioned to a certain level of globalized convenience, and Comoros systematically strips that convenience away.
Trap number 1, the flight funnel. We touched on this, but let's go deeper. There is only one viable entry point for international flights, HAH Airport on Grand Comore, and the flight volume is incredibly low.
Very low.
We are talking about maybe 70 to 80 flights a month total. You are entirely at the mercy of Ethiopian Airlines, Kenya Airways, Air Tanzania, and a handful of erratic regional carriers.
And the mechanism of this trap is the total lack of redundancy.
What do you mean by redundancy?
Well, if you are flying out of London or New York and your flight is canceled, the airline simply rebooks you on a flight leaving 3 hours later, right?
Right, there's always another plane.
The system has slack. In Comoros, there is no slack. If your inbound flight from Addis Ababa gets canceled due to a mechanical failure, you aren't waiting 3 hours. You might be waiting 3 days for the next piece of metal to arrive.
3 days. It forces you to completely abandon the idea of finding a magical, cheap, direct flight. You basically have to become your own travel agent.
You really do.
You have to hunt for hub sales to major East African transit points like Nairobi or Addis Ababa, and then independently link those to the regional flights into Moroni. It requires deeply proactive logistics.
But honestly, the flight bottleneck is merely an inconvenience compared to the shock of the financial reality on the ground.
Trap number 2, the cash and card trap.
This is the one that truly terrifies people.
It terrified me just reading about it. Comoros operates on a system that is fundamentally hostile to digital finance. It is an intensely, almost exclusively, cash-based society.
As we mentioned, there are no ATMs at the airport.
Right. In fact, the only reliable ATMs that will accept a foreign bank card are clustered entirely in downtown Moroni.
And when it comes to swiping a credit card,
You could basically forget about it. The Golden Tulip Hotel is one of the only establishments in the entire country that will reliably process a Visa card.
and if a traveler relies on a MasterCard or an American Express,
They are carrying worthless plastic. The financial infrastructure simply does not recognize them.
that is wild.
Think about the sheer panic of that scenario. You land after 30 hours in transit. In any other country, you tap your iPhone on a terminal to pay for an Uber, you hand the receptionist your Amex for the incidentals hold, and you tap your card at a cafe for a sandwich.
It's all seamless.
Yes. But in Comoros, you are standing in an airport with no ATM, holding cards no one has the hardware to read, in an economy that runs entirely on physical Comorian francs.
It is a total regression of the modern travel experience. I mean, we have outsourced our financial planning to Apple Pay and global banking networks.
We really have.
We don't think about money anymore. We think about access. Removing that access requires a complete rewiring of your daily risk assessment.
The only way to survive it is old-school, paranoid travel prep. You have to arrive with thick stacks of pristine US dollars or euros.
Physical cash.
Physical cash. You have to physically carry your entire trip budget on your person. You absolutely must prepay your accommodation online before you ever leave your house, simply to minimize the sheer volume of cash you have to haul around and physically protect in a money belt.
You are acting as your own armored car.
That's exactly it. You're a walking Brinks truck. And that concept of self-reliance extends far beyond your wallet. It extends to your physical safety and your itinerary, which brings us to trap number 3.
Trap 3, the underdeveloped paradise trap.
Right. The marketing brochure promises you an untouched paradise. But what a traveler fails to realize is that untouched is just a polite synonym for unsupported.
The lack of a municipal safety net is jarring.
The government advisories we looked at are incredibly sobering on this point. There are virtually no ambulances. Emergency medical services are minimal to non-existent the second you leave the capital city.
And what about moving between the islands?
It's so informal. If
Yeah.
you want to travel between the islands, say taking a boat from Grande Comore over to Moheli to see the turtles you are dealing with, completely undocumented, informal boat schedules.
You can't just go online and book a ferry ticket.
No, you don't book a ticket online. You walk down to the port and you wait until a boat captain decides his vessel is full enough to justify the fuel costs.
It is the ultimate test of patience. The infrastructure does not conform to your schedule. You conform to the lack of infrastructure.
It's like dating someone who describes themselves as a free spirit.
Oh, I love this analogy.
Right. It sounds incredibly romantic and spontaneous on the first date, but when you actually need them to show up on time to take you to the airport and they are nowhere to be found, you realize free spirit just means they are totally unreliable and incapable of supporting you.
Exactly.
Untouched travel is profoundly romantic until you twist your knee hiking down the volcanic caldera of Mount Karsala, and you suddenly realize there is no rescue helicopter coming for you. You have to walk yourself out.
The only mitigation strategy for this is mandatory slow travel.
You have to pad your schedule.
You really do. You cannot treat Comoros like a tight 4-day weekend in a European capital where you schedule your activities down to the hour. You must build massive buffers into your itinerary.
Because things will go wrong.
If you plan to take a boat to another island, you have to accept that it might take 2 days to actually depart. You have to rely on pre-confirmed, heavily vetted local operators who understand the terrain and the informal networks of the islands. You have to build slack into the system because the system will inevitably fail you.
So with all of this friction, the massive costs, the cash paranoia, the failing power grids, the lack of medical support, we have to ask the big question. How safe is it, really?
Right. Safety is paramount.
What is the actual day-to-day reality of existing in this beta version of a destination?
It requires us to separate the concept of physical safety from the concept of structural comfort. They are two wildly different metrics in Comoros.
Let's look at the physical and cultural safety first. Comoros is a majority Sunni Muslim nation. The culture is deeply traditional.
Which means there are rules.
Yes, it requires modest dress, particularly when you step outside the boundaries of a westernized hotel. Public displays of affection are culturally inappropriate. But across the board, every travel guide and first-hand account we read emphasizes that the local population is incredibly hospitable.
Very welcoming.
Very. The crime rate is remarkably low, consisting almost entirely of crimes of opportunity, like someone snatching an unattended bag at a busy market in Moroni. You don't feel a sense of physical menace walking down the street.
However, a responsible traveler must impartially evaluate the official macro-level warnings issued by foreign governments.
And we want to be very clear here. We are not taking any political sides. We are just imparting the facts from the state advisories so you know what the government is telling its citizens.
Right. So the U.S. State Department actively flags the risk of civil unrest. Given the economic realities we discussed earlier, protests can erupt in the capital and they can turn violent quickly.
The State Department also explicitly highlights the severe legal risks for LGBTQ+ travelers. Same-sex relationships are criminalized in Comoros, and that is a non-negotiable reality that deeply affects who can safely visit this destination.
Furthermore, the Canadian government travel advisories heavily emphasize the severe inadequacy of the medical facilities.
Yeah, that part was scary.
They state explicitly that you should not travel there without comprehensive insurance that specifically covers emergency medical evacuation.
Because if you do get seriously ill or require complex surgery, the local hospital simply cannot handle it. You have to be medically flown to a more developed island like Reunion or to mainland Africa, which costs tens of thousands of dollars.
So the physical threat from the population is very low, but the structural threat from the environment is extremely high.
But it is exactly that raw, untamed environment that delivers the reward.
And the reward is staggering.
It really is. These are moments you simply cannot purchase. in a heavily touristed, manicured destination. Imagine hiking out to the coast at golden hour. You are standing on a jagged cliff made entirely of black, volcanic lava rock.
Incredible.
The water crashing against it is an impossible, brilliant turquoise. Behind you, dominating the skyline, is the massive brooding bulk of Mount Karthala. The air literally smells like ylang-ylang and cloves.
Like perfume.
Like perfume. If you take the boat over to Mohili, you can sit on a beach and watch massive sea turtles drag themselves out of the ocean to nest. You can spot whales breaching just offshore. You can watch wild lemurs moving through the trees.
And what's the best part?
The most vital detail. You are doing all of this in total silence.
No crowds.
None. There are no diesel tour buses idling behind you. There aren't 40 other tourists aggressively shoving their smartphones in front of your face to get a photo for Instagram.
That absolute profound isolation is the premium you are paying for. That is the magic of the Perfume Islands.
But the magic is consistently interrupted by the friction. And that friction hits your wallet hard. The disappointments mentioned in the sources are very real.
What kind of disappointments?
Well, the sources highlight extortionate costs for basic services. You might pay €80 per person for a very rudimentary day tour. You are going to deal with patchy housekeeping at expensive hotels.
Oh, and the food options.
If you're a vegetarian, you're going to struggle immensely because the concept of a strict vegetarian diet isn't culturally ingrained in their culinary traditions. You'll be eating a lot of plain rice and bananas.
And the power cuts. We have to mention the power cuts again.
The inescapable reality. You can pay $150 a night for a highly rated hotel, and the lights will still go out. The air conditioning will die in the middle of a sweltering, humid night. The water pressure in the shower will drop to 0.
Which brings up a very complex psychological conflict for the modern traveler.
This is where I want your take. Is it fair for us, as tourists from highly developed nations, to complain about a lack of polish? Are we justified in being annoyed by a missing barista coffee or a power cut when we purposefully sought out a frontier destination?
It's a tough question.
Aren't the power cuts just part of the rugged charm we signed up for?
It is a really common trap to romanticize infrastructure failure as authenticity. But we have to draw a very hard economic line between authentic rusticity and simple price gouging.
Okay, where's the line?
If you travel to a remote village and you pay $30 a night to sleep in a basic fan-cooled room in a local family's guest house and the power goes out, yes, that is part of the adventure. You are paying a price that is perfectly commensurate with the local infrastructure. You accepted the terms of the deal.
The expectation aligns with the financial investment.
Exactly. But if a hotel is charging $150 a night, which is a premium developed world rate that implies a certain level of operational competence, and they fail to provide electricity or running water, that is no longer charm.
Right.
That is a fundamental failure of the product.
Because they charged you for the diesel generator, but the generator didn't turn on.
Precisely. In Comoros right now, the pricing structure heavily reflects a mature, developed tourism market, but the actual delivery of services reflects an unready beta phase market.
So you're overpaying.
You are paying a luxury premium to beta test a product that simply isn't finished yet.
You are beta testing their tourism industry. That is exactly it. So if a listener is hearing this, and that level of friction sounds like an exhausting amount of work, especially considering a 10 to 12-day trip for a couple is going to burn a $3,000 to $5,000 hole in their bank account, where else should they look?
If the geographic concept of the Indian Ocean appeals to you, but the execution in Comoros sounds miserable, the data points to two very clear alternatives.
Let's hear them.
The first major alternative is Madagascar.
Oh, Madagascar.
Geographically and biologically, it offers a remarkably similar profile. You get the volcanic highlands, you get incredibly unique endemic wildlife, and you get stunning isolated beaches. And surprisingly, the flight costs from North America or Europe are broadly similar to reaching Comoros.
But the critical difference is scale.
Yes, scale.
Madagascar is massive.
Yeah.
And because it's massive, it has a highly developed, scaled-up tourism infrastructure. There is intense competition. You have exponentially more choices for hotels, for expert tour guides, and for internal transport.
And competition drives down prices.
Exactly. Because there are 100 hotels competing for your dollar instead of 5, your daily budget goes so much further.
Yay.
You can achieve the exact same level of rugged adventure for significantly less money with a far better safety net.
And what if the traveler isn't looking for rugged adventure at all? What if they just want the postcard aesthetic without the hassle?
Then they need to look at the second alternative, Mauritius.
Mauritius is gorgeous.
If Madagascar is the scaled-up adventure, Mauritius is the flawless, polished execution. It delivers the exact, easy tropical escape that people mistakenly assume they are going to get when they look at photos of Comoros.
The infrastructure in Mauritius is entirely mature.
It's built for tourists. You get direct flights from major hubs. There are ATMs on every corner. You can use your credit card to buy a bottle of water at a local convenience store.
Imagine that.
And the range of choices is staggering. You can find a beautiful little guest house for $60 a night, or you could book a massive luxury resort for $500 a night, and regardless of what you choose, both will have reliable power, hot water, and seamless Wi-Fi.
It's just easy.
The overall trip cost when you factor in flights and food might end up being similar to Comoros, but the experience is entirely frictionless. You are actually on a vacation.
Which forces us to finalize our analysis. We need to look at the matrix verdicts. Who is Comoros actually built for? We need to evaluate the different traveler personas to determine who should embrace the friction and who should book a ticket elsewhere.
Let's run through the archetypes. First persona, the traditional budget backpacker.
It is incredibly hard to justify the economics for a budget backpacker.
The math is just brutal. You cannot overcome the $1,100 minimum flight cost. And once you land, a daily budget of $60 to $90 for mere survival, sleeping in hot rooms, eating basic rice is objectively too high when compared to the mainland.
It's just not worth it for them.
No. A backpacker could take that exact same daily budget, fly into Kenya or Tanzania, live significantly better, and see world-class megafauna on a safari. For the pure backpacker, Comoros is a hard pass.
But the equation changes for the mid-range traveler.
This is the absolute sweet spot.
What's sweet spot, yeah?
If you are an adventurous traveler with a daily budget of $140 to $220 and you value atmosphere, extreme exclusivity, and cultural immersion over high-end luxury amenities, Comoros is tailored for you.
You have enough capital to handle the bumps.
Exactly. You have enough money to afford a solid air-conditioned room and hire a local guide to safely trek the volcano. You have the financial padding to absorb the logistical quirks without panicking. And your reward is having an entire tropical island essentially to yourself.
What about travelers with children? The family persona?
For a family vacation, it borders on a definitive no.
A definitive no.
Unless you are traveling with highly resilient older teenagers who actively crave hardcore, uncomfortable adventure.
The compounded risk factors are simply too severe for young children.
They really are. You have the glaring lack of family-sized rooms, the exhausting 30-hour transit times that will completely break a toddler, and the terrifying lack of emergency pediatric health care. If you have a budget for a family island vacation, take them to Mauritius where they can safely swim and you can actually relax.
And for the luxury traveler who wants to spend freely.
Do not go.
Just don't.
You can easily spend $300, $500 a day in Comoros, but you cannot buy a Seychelles-level experience because the infrastructure to provide it does not exist. You will pay 5-star prices for 3-star service. The ceiling for luxury is artificially capped by the failing municipal grid.
Save your luxury budget for an island economy that actually knows how to cater to it.
Finally, we have to address the digital nomad.
This is a fascinating crack.
It really is. A lot of remote workers look at the visa policy. Comoros offers a very easy 45-day visa on arrival, and they think it's a perfect place to set up a laptop on a beach and work for a month.
But the environment is actively hostile to digital productivity.
We give it a maximum viability of 1 to 2 weeks, purely as a vacation. The relentless power cuts and the highly unreliable internet outside of the top-tier hotels will completely destroy your ability to maintain long-term remote work.
You can't be on a Zoom call.
You cannot reliably join a Zoom call or push code to a server if the entire island's power grid drops offline without warning. It is a phenomenal place to purposefully disconnect, but it is a catastrophic place to rely on a connection.
So if we synthesize all of this, the core identity of the traveler really dictates the destination.
It does.
If you want a vacation, if your goal is to decompress, read a novel on a lounger, and be actively pampered, go to Mauritius. But if you want an expedition, if you want to sweat, to navigate complex cultural and logistical challenges, and to truly earn your memories, go to Comoros.
That is the perfect distinction. Comoros is a breathtaking, wildly expensive logistical puzzle. It is a destination that heavily rewards patience and adaptability, but it aggressively punishes expectation.
If you expect it to be easy, you will be miserable.
Completely miserable. But if you embrace the friction, you might have the most memorable trip of your life.
Yet, if we step back from the immediate logistical concerns of the traveler for a second, There's a final, much broader reality we have to confront. A dynamic that threatens to alter the very nature of what makes Comoros special.
What is the bigger picture here? What are we leaving the listener to ponder?
We keep circling back to the looming 2027 Indian Ocean Island Games. We talked about the frantic rush to build concrete tourism infrastructure, the paving of roads, the rapid erection of massive new hotel blocks in Moroni to house the delegation.
Right, the gentrification wave.
But Comoros is fundamentally a fragile, low-lying island ecosystem, and it is facing the immovable, compounding reality of climate change and rising sea levels.
They are building heavy infrastructure on a shifting foundation.
Exactly. It raises a deeply provocative question about the future of the islands. What happens when the desperate economic sprint to pave paradise for a 2-week sporting event collides with that environmental fragility?
That's a huge question.
In their rush to build a viable tourism machine for 2027, Comoros risks destroying the very untouched ecosystem, the nesting turtle habitats, the pristine coral reefs, the raw, undeveloped coastlines that makes it so uniquely valuable in the first place.
They are racing to build a parking lot, but they might bulldoze the secret beach club to do it.
It is a haunting thought. They could permanently alter their greatest natural asset long before the mass tourists ever arrive to appreciate it.
It forces you to think deeply about the footprint we leave as travelers and the true cost of development in a place like the Perfume Islands.
It is a reality that every traveler should weigh before they decide to step onto that airplane.
Absolutely. That brings us to the end of this journey. We want to thank you for joining us as we unpack this incredible puzzle. We encourage you to keep questioning the highly filtered photos on your feed, keep exploring the hard logistics behind the fantasy, and keep looking for the absolute reality behind the travel brochures.
If this gave you the honest verdict you needed, follow the show. New episodes drop every day.
That is the honest verdict from Phil and H.